So, good morning. It's a delight to be here. It's an honour to be here. I'm joining you from sunny Scotland, on the west coast of Scotland. If I look outside the window to my office, I see the sea. Sometimes we get dolphins and porpoises and very occasionally orcas there. And it's been fantastic weather. Of course, like many people, I'm on lockdown, have been for several weeks. So I've titled my talk Scrum at Scale, the Business Agility Operating System. First of all, I'd like to just say a few words about myself. I'm a certified Scrum trainer, a Scrum at Scale trainer, and an organizational relationship systems coach. I try to do a balanced mixture of training and coaching. I've been using Scrum since 2001, and before that, since the late 1990s, really lightweight processes, in particular extreme programming. Whilst originally a software developer, it's been many years, probably at least 20 years since anybody paid me to write code. You know, I like to keep my hand in on that sort of stuff now and again. But I work a lot with senior leaders, helping them to supporting their introduction of Agile, and you can see some of the clients I've had the pleasure of working with there. I also like to sail, which is one of the reasons why I moved here. So what am I going to talk about? First of all, what is business agility? Everybody's talking about business agility, and I think there's some agreement and also maybe some disagreement about what that is. So I'll be providing my definition, if you like. I didn't pick it out of thin air. It came from some people who have influenced me very greatly. Then look at what are the implications of that? What do we need to do to get that stuff to work? And how does Scrum at Scale support that, or support these implications? So why, why? My thesis is that Scrum at Scale is a good basis if you're going to really have a good crack at business agility. It's a good basis for implementing that. Why, basically? Why is it particularly suitable? I don't want to get into any sort of comparison of different scaling frameworks. I have clear preferences. I think there's some great agile scaling approaches out there. They all have their time and place. I have a preference for some of them rather than others, but I'm going to focus on Scrum at Scale. And then I'm going to provide a little case study of and say a few words about using an invitational leadership style to help introduce Agile, in particular Scrum at Scale. And then I hope we have some time left over for Q&A. I've got a few slides, but at the end of the day, we don't need to read every word on every slide. So that's the overview. And first of all, back to basics. I'm sure you've all seen this, the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. Yeah, there's 4 pairs of things that we value there, and the 17 people who who created the Agile Manifesto back in 2001 came up with those 8 things. Had some year before last, a great week in the presence of Jess Sutherland, and we had some great conversations. And he said that basically the XP and Scrum people effectively defined those, and whilst the others were off skiing, and when they came back, everybody agreed to those things. Maybe there are different views on that, but and I apologize if I've misrepresented Jeff's views on that. But I think the key thing here is that Scrum and XP people, whilst there were other frameworks present at that meeting in 2001, had a huge influence on the Agile Manifesto. But when we talk about Agile, not all of those things really are directly what we mean with Agile. Some of them are things that we need to do to support Agile, and one of them, in my opinion, in particular, the final one, responding to change over following a plan, is what Agile is really about. The other things are things that we need to do in the knowledge, or in the 21st century, where knowledge work is dominant, we're in the knowledge economy. We need those other pairs of values. So extrapolating from that, if Agile is all about having a capability to change your mind, what's business agility all about? And my view, and the view of some of people I'm working closely with, is that it's the ability to adapt the organization quickly to external and internal forces to maximize customer delight. There are market forces, there are things happening inside the company, the resistance to change, so internal forces as well. I'm particularly inspired by the work of Peter Drucker and definitely one of my mentors, Steve Denning, and others. We believe that customer delight, and hence creating and sustaining customers, should be the goal of a company. Other things like maximizing value, keeping stakeholders happy, generating profit, and so on, are all outcomes that we get by combining a relentless focus on customer delight with disciplined execution. Here's an example of where it went wrong. Back in 2007, Nokia were amongst the market leaders. They had a wonderful process. They had a 4-year, more or less, development process. They fed new feature phone and smartphone ideas into that development process, kept turning the crank, and then out would come interesting new products. But along comes Steve Jobs at the beginning, towards the beginning of 2007, presented the first iPhone, and I've actually got one here. It's in a drawer, but should have had it available to show to you. But I'm sure some of you have saw that first iPhone, and there was a paradigm shift, a whole new interaction model. Nokia had effectively process complacency. They were very focused on their process. They didn't have the business agility to be able to pivot, to be able to create, to really change course. So a massive fail, and that was the beginning of the end for Nokia. So I'm not saying that Steve Jobs is the ultimate product owner or anything like that. I think he had many good qualities, but we should emulate some of them, maybe not some others. I think the crucial thing here is it's summarized by Charles Darwin. Just got a lock up here. Let's find out what's happening with my slides. Sorry about this. Okay, it's not Charles Darwin's recognition was it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. So it's really all about having a capability to change. This is the crucial thing. And okay, what's that really about? What does it need? What do we need if we're looking for an operating system for business agility? What do we need from that operating system? Well, we need to be able to respond fast to change. So we need coordinated and decentralized decision making. This idea that that you have a single product owner and then many teams creating different sub products, I think has some issues. It can result in a higher latency for decision making. has benefits as well, in that you could coordination is easier perhaps. But I think there's a way in the middle where we can have decentralized decision making and nevertheless coordination. So we can actually create a really streamlined product fulfilling a vision. So we need to align around metrics where customer delight is the main goal. And so we need a relentless focus on customer delight. I know that's not always easy. Customers don't know what they need a lot of the time. And that's where the design thinking community, especially if we have was recently at a complexity-based approach to design thinking led by Dave Snowden, which was really fascinating. So design thinking off the shelf isn't the answer. It can turn into a bit of a prescriptive process, but a complexity-based understanding of design approaches can help us there. Making sure that every team is on board with that goal. And we need teams and individuals who are engaged and passionate about their work, and no more dividing the workforce into thinkers and doers. So often agile implementations turn into just delivery, and we have management on top deciding everything. That's not what is going to really engage the workforce, and it's actually a waste of human capital. We need a more humane system that really helps tap into the passion that creative people have about their work. So we're getting ideas from everybody. And to help with that, we need leaders who are catalysts for all of that and are enablers, creating and sustaining an environment where people can do this. So how does Scrum at Scale satisfy those needs? It is focused around, a lot of Scrum at Scale is about creating a minimum viable bureaucracy. So minimize decision-making latency and alignment between teams of teams so that they can move fast. And a minimized decision-making latency is actually a proven driver for organizational performance. Obviously, if you're making the wrong decisions fast, that's not going to help, but making the right decisions fast is important. And of course, we do need that alignment between teams. And a clear means of coordination between teams and teams of teams. The Scrum at Scale has the concept of a scrum of scrums, a team of teams, and with defined but very minimal coordination mechanisms between them. The idea is that you don't add new mechanisms unless there's a need for it. So if there's a problem to be solved, by all means, add communication mechanisms, add coordination mechanisms. But let's not add traditional management practices to solve these sorts of problems. So a typical example would be, instead of having an architecture board, so a team of architects outside the teams doing the work, who decide on the main architectural decisions. Instead, we will have a community of architects, a sort of virtual architecture team that's with representation from the teams doing the real work. And clear guidance on the responsibilities of senior leaders is provided by Scrum at Scale. And it's got a really focused and very holistic approach to metrics and transparency. Okay, sorry, I've got a duplicate there. Oops. Okay, so here's a little overview of Scrum at Scale. I'm sure some of you have taken a look at it, but this is a high-level view of the framework. It's two interlocking cycles. So just like with Scrum, we've got a product owner and a Scrum Master, and one of the things you should never do in Scrum, many things we can negotiate on, but one of the things you should never do is have the product owner and the Scrum Master as the same person. Similarly, we separate those lines of responsibility with Scrum at Scale, because the people looking after the product owner cycle, of course, naturally they want to get more and more stuff done. And the Scrum Master cycle, they want to make sure that things get done properly, that it's a sustainable pace, that engagement is taken care of, and it's not just about maximizing velocity. And it's really by separating those areas of responsibility, those lines of responsibility, and getting the balance right is one of the reasons why Scrum works. And this is preserved in Scrum at Scale. And I wanted to briefly mention the two parts of Scrum at Scale, which are where senior leaders get involved. The executive action team, this is on the Scrum Master cycle side. And this is saying that a key role for senior leaders in Scrum at Scale, and I think this could be bolted on to really any scaling framework, is to have people who are focused on helping the organization to become more agile. They're going to define metrics for helping to do that. They're going to have a vision. They're going to execute that vision, maybe with a team of coaches helping them. And that vision is not about the product, but it's about how we want to develop as an agile organization. And they support everything through mentoring, coaching, and challenging the organization to iteratively evolve. And a key thing that they do, of course, is to act as a focus for Scrum Masters to bring impediments to that they can't remove themselves. So things that are blocking team performance, things that are blocking teams from developing further, senior leaders should have their door open and should be able to provide help in removing those things. And then we have the executive meta Scrum, who create an overarching vision for products. So if you like a company backlog, a division backlog, then they're not going to have all the details there. That's going to be delegated to product owners looking after individual products. I've just got a message saying that my network is causing poor quality. Could somebody just give me a quick input? Are you following me so far?
Yes, we are hearing you and seeing you.
Oh, fantastic. Good. Okay. Just a quick glitch on my internet. What we need is senior people really talking about providing prioritization of the different initiatives. One thing that a lot of companies do, a lot of organizations do, is they try to do too much at once. The executive meta Scrum needs to actually establish priorities between those different initiatives. And from that, we can actually derive the work of the whole organization. So a quick overview, how can we introduce Scrum at Scale? We need to understand your context. So why do you want to introduce Scrum at Scale? There will be, what's the why of introducing Agile? Then an assessment, ranking the importance of the components, combining that with the heat map that's generated by the assessment, and from that you can generate a transformation backlog, if you like. So there will be, I don't want to say too much about this slide, but basically there will be different reasons why you want to go agile. I mean, it's all going to be about the ability to change, but maybe the speed of delivery is more important for some organizations, less important for other organizations. Maybe you've got a highly distributed environment, maybe everybody's sitting together, although I think the time has gone for that, perhaps. The new world, the new normal is going to be highly distributed. So what's the time frame for becoming agile? That's going to also drive how you actually transform. And then you actually get your organization, the people in your organization. I did this with a major telecommunications company by going to each team and to ask them to assess how you're doing in terms of the individual components that are part of Scrum at Scale, things like being able to deliver. How good is your impediment removal, and how good is your continuous integration approach, and so on. So you end up with different colors, different symbols, different shapes, and those illustrate where the hotspots are, where are your strengths, where are your weaknesses. This is a very powerful built-in assessment framework that Scrum at Scale has. And then you can combine your understanding about what you want to achieve with your component importance, or the strength of your components, and you can actually derive a transition backlog from that. So just an overview of what to do. So final topic. I'd like to talk about why is change hard. If change is introduced without participation through command and control, by saying the executives in a company say, we are going to introduce Agile, we're going to do it with Scrum at Scale, for example, and if there's no actual consultation, that will generate resistance and fear. Fight or flight will dominate, and people won't be open to new ideas. There will be simple instead of complex thinking. Perhaps Dee Hock's, the founder of Visa, words are relevant here, that simple, clear purpose and principles give rise to complex, intelligent behavior. Complex rules and regulations give rise to simple and stupid behavior. And some of those approaches to introducing Agile, which come with huge frameworks, incredibly, many roles and so on, are really not, I think we're in the complex rules and regulations part of that equation, if you like, in some cases. And I think the key thing here is that increasing engagement requires invitation instead of imposition. Ideally, leaders should invite staff to implement Agile, and that requires real choice. For example, just the opportunity to say no. Different organizations will have different tolerances to that. But one thing I found, a couple of things I found very useful is Daniel Mezek's open space agility based on open space technology. And I've used that several times in organizations where you get everybody together and you actually, over a whole day, you get them to plan what is the next enterprise iteration, with real choice from the people involved. David Marquet's intent-based leadership I found really inspiring. So his book, Turn the Ship Around, that's got a lot of useful tips. Linda Rising's Mary and Mary Lynn Mann's Fearless Change, and also their follow-up book, More Fearless Change. Lots of great ideas on how to introduce these ideas there. And Bill Joyner and Stephen Joseph's Leadership Agility, and it's the basis of my approach for leadership coaching. So just a few ideas, and one organization that had the pleasure of coaching over a year or so, and they implemented this. It's an 80-person division in a major telecommunications company, introduced Scrum at Scale using open space agility. And what we're seeing is that it's really driving engagement. There was a lot of skepticism about Agile to start with, and then I said, well, let's give people the choice on what the next steps are, and then let's get them together on a regular basis to reflect on how they're doing. So it's like a review, if you like, of the previous enterprise iteration, maybe after over 4 or 5 months, and then planning in the second part of an all hands meeting, organizers open space, what's the next step? And then after a few months, coming back and planning the next step. This really works, and I encourage people to do this. So thank you very much for staying with me. I think we've got a few minutes, just a few minutes for some questions. If you need to contact me, that's my contact data, but I'm sure the slides are going to be made available to you afterwards as well.